I still remember the day Earth went dark. Not in some poetic, spiritual sense, but literally. The stars above us dimmed beneath a veil of plasma clouds, and the satellites that once tethered our civilization to the stars were severed in an instant. They called it a containment strike. That was the Council's phrase. Cold, clinical, and clean. But down on the surface, there was nothing clean about it. Cities buckled beneath the electromagnetic pulses. Communications vanished. Power grids collapsed. Planes fell from the sky. Hospitals lost power mid-surgery. Entire continents went silent. I watched it all from orbit, aboard the ISV Veritas, one of Earth's deep space survey ships. We'd just finished a mineral scan beyond Europa when the orders came through, return to Earth. Emergency priority. But before we could turn the ship, the screen filled with flames. Earth, my home, my family, was turning into a sphere of chaos. The fleet that did it hovered above our world like silent executioners, an armada of Council warships, their weapons still glowing, their shields humming with arrogant confidence. They didn't even attempt to communicate. They claimed later that it was preemptive, that humans had become too aggressive, too unpredictable, too fast. We had reverse-engineered hyperlight travel in record time, leaped across the stars, and begun establishing colonies faster than any species in recorded history. The Council saw us not as allies or peers, but as a threat. And so, without declaration or dialogue, they struck. Those of us on the Veritas watched helplessly. We were outside the blast range, too far to intervene, too close to escape the horror. My comms officer, Dallin, wept openly. He was Martian-born, but his parents lived in Lagos. Our pilot, Jenna, just stared blankly at the screen, her hands gripping the console so tightly her knuckles turned white. I stood there, jaw clenched, fists at my sides, feeling every fiber in my being scream to do something, anything. But we had no weapons. We had no reinforcements. We were explorers, not soldiers. In the days that followed, Council propaganda filled the galactic networks. They spoke of surgical precision, of targeted strikes against military sites. They said Earth would be given the chance to reintegrate peacefully. Lies. The images we captured told the real story. Civilian centers vaporized. Water systems poisoned. Entire climate networks destabilized. It wasn't a warning. It was an attempted execution. But here's what they didn't count on: humanity's ability to endure. We've crawled from caves, survived plagues, fought empires. We do not forget. We do not forgive. Earth didn't die that day. We transformed. As the Council turned away, smug in their supposed victory, the world below began to change. Hidden bunkers lit up. Surviving networks flickered back online. And deep within the fractured Earth, the seeds of vengeance began to grow. I didn't know it then, but that day marked the birth of something new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. Not just retaliation. Reinvention. Relentless. Ruthless. Human. The Council thought Earth would break. They assumed the shock would shatter us, that fear would make us crawl back to the negotiating table, heads bowed, begging for forgiveness. But Earth didn't beg. It vanished. One day, long-range scans could still detect scattered signals, faint, static-choked echoes of our once noisy networks. The next, silence. A perfect, calculated silence. An electromagnetic blackout field enveloped the Sol system, scrambling every incoming scan and outgoing trace. The official term was a containment shroud. To the rest of the galaxy, it was as if Earth had ceased to exist. Rumors spread fast. Entire species speculated endlessly. Some believed Earth had collapsed into civil war. Others whispered of biological plagues or AI uprisings. The more paranoid believed Earth had self-destructed in a final act of madness. But I had my doubts. I had hope. I spent those years bouncing from outpost to outpost, a human face among aliens who now looked at me with a strange blend of pity and fear. I became a relic, a reminder of a species no longer visible but never forgotten. Occasionally, encrypted bursts would find me, untraceable messages written in code older than the Council itself. They were short, fragmented, but they were enough. Reconstruction ongoing. No contact. Observe protocols. Black Forge active. Reactor stable. Project Ember on schedule. Ember. That word haunted me. It showed up in more than one message, each time attached to different coordinates, always shifting. Whatever it was moving and growing. Then, 20 years after Earth's silence, something happened. A Zorithian scout vessel entered soul space on a mission of curiosity. The Zorith are a reptilian species known for their arrogance. They assumed the humans had long since burned out and that whatever secrets lay hidden in the dead system were ripe for claiming. Their last transmission was brief. A single word, screamed in pure terror, "awakened." When the Council recovered the ship's black box weeks later, they dismissed most of it as a malfunction. But I got a copy. A friend within the Tarsk Information Bureau owed me a favor. What I saw chilled me to the core. The footage showed the ship approaching Neptune's orbit when it encountered a massive structure, black, silent, and shaped like a clawed crescent. No response. No signals. The Zorith captain ordered a scan. That was when the structure moved. Not like a ship under power, but like a creature waking from hibernation. It stretched, shifted, and then disappeared in a flash of gravity distortion, faster than any Council ship was capable of. Moments later, the footage ended in static. The Council dismissed it. Visual corruption, they said. Sensor anomalies. But some of us knew better. Earth hadn't been idle. Earth had been building. In the shadows, under the silence, something had taken form. Not a fleet. A revenant. And now, it was stirring. Not to plead for peace, but to make the galaxy remember what it had tried to erase. They came without warning. 20 ships, matte black and silent, slipped from folded space like ghosts surfacing from the depths of a still ocean. No identifiers. No transmission codes. No diplomatic preamble. They drifted just beyond the exosphere of Varnak's outpost, a strategic military hub in Council-controlled space. The station, guarded by a garrison of nearly 1,000 elite forces, didn't even have time to raise its shields. The first blast wasn't a missile, it was a ripple. A gravitational wave that tore the outer hull from its moorings like paper in a hurricane. Seconds later, a follow-up strike vaporized the entire western hangar wing. No declaration of war. No warning shot. Just precision devastation. The 20 black ships moved in synchronized silence, carving through Council defenses with terrifying coordination. By the time the distress signal reached the nearest Council fleet, Varnax was gone. Just like that. I was there. Not on the outpost, thank the stars, but on a diplomatic escort vessel nearby. We had been en route to a routine hearing with Varnax officials, carrying an ambassador from the Kellery sector. The escort ship wasn't armed for conflict, barely shielded. We had front-row seats to an execution. The Ember Fleet, they didn't call themselves that, but the name stuck, moved like a single entity, every action premeditated, every shot surgically precise. The Council's finest defense systems, automated drones, pulsar turrets, ion walls, crumbled. And then, just as quickly as they arrived, the ships vanished again, slipping back into folded space without a trace. Our escort vessel had powered down to avoid detection. The ambassador beside me was frozen in horror, her tendrils pale and still. I think I whispered something like, "This is Earth's doing." But in truth, I didn't know. I felt it. Like recognizing the scent of a memory. Like the familiar burn of anger. Our commander attempted to send a peace transmission to the unknown ships. He wanted to plead, to identify us as non-combatants. I remember his face, stern, hopeful. He never got a chance to speak. A pulse of blue light burst across the bridge, harmless to us, but when it touched the commander, he convulsed and dropped to the floor. No blood. No burns. Just gone. Dead in an instant. Some kind of neural disruptor, precise enough to take him without damaging the ship. That was the Ember Fleet's message. No words. Just a single, deliberate action. The Council tried to spin it, said it was a rogue AI faction, maybe some pirate fleet with stolen tech. But I knew better. I'd seen fragments from Earth's lost research archives before the blackout. I'd studied their emerging energy signatures, the early iterations of fusion ripple weapons and quantum targeting. This wasn't alien. This was ours. Earth had returned. Not to beg. Not to explain. But to demonstrate. They were no longer defending themselves. They were setting the stage for something bigger. Something final. And the galaxy, it wasn't ready. We called them embers, but they were more than ships. More than weapons. They were messages, floating monuments to pain, rage, and memory. Each vessel bore a name etched into its hull in unadorned Terran script. Hiroshima, Aleppo, Lviv, Fallujah, Kigali. Each one whispered a story the Council had never bothered to understand. Not warnings. Not threats. Memorials. I met one, well, her. A being that blurred the line between human and machine. Her name was Rena, though she had no mouth to speak it and no eyes to express it. She was the mind behind the dreadnought Soweto Dawn, a ship so vast it blotted out the stars when it drifted overhead. She found me. My diplomatic clearance had somehow kept me alive this long. I was on a neutral observation outpost in the Orville Belt, collecting reports, trying to piece together Earth's trajectory. When the Soweto Dawn appeared, panic swept the station. Everyone prepared for annihilation. But the ship didn't fire. Instead, a comms channel opened, private and encrypted. My console flickered, then glowed with soft white text. Asterisk, do you remember Paris? Asterisk. I did. I'd been stationed there during the siege, back when the Council insisted Earth submit to its rehabilitation protocols. It was Rena's home once, before the skies cracked open. Now, she was a weapon. The transmission shifted. Her voice, if it could be called that, was calm, mechanical, yet filled with an eerie warmth. "Do you understand vengeance?" she asked. "I understand justice," I said. There was a pause. Then, "Good. Watch." And I did. Moments later, a Council battalion warped into range, 34 warships, standard formation, trained to respond to Class 10 threats. They opened fire without warning, of course. Beam arrays. Torpedoes. Disruption fields. A coordinated, full-scale assault. None of it mattered. The Soweto Dawn didn't fire back in haste. She waited, calculated, endured the barrage until the last round discharged. Then, in the silence that followed, she responded. One shot. A single bolt of energy, layered in colors I'd never seen before, unfolded like a blooming flower. It didn't just destroy the ships, it rewrote the space they occupied. The fleet didn't explode. It unraveled. Each ship collapsed inward, as if gravity itself had been reversed, compressed into glittering fragments that vanished like dust. 34 ships. Gone in less than 10 seconds. No screams. No alarms. Just silence. Rena's voice returned. They said we were dangerous. They were right. I stood trembling, the glow of her transmission still fading from my console. She wasn't boasting. She wasn't angry. She was simply delivering. Every Ember-class dreadnought held a soul. Not metaphorically, literally. Survivors of the first strike, minds shattered by loss, bonded with AI, forged into vessels of exacting purpose. This wasn't madness. It was memory given direction. The galaxy had burned us to the ground. And from the ashes, we had built the instruments of their reckoning. The Council fractured faster than anyone expected. The first blow wasn't from Earth, it came from within. The moment the Ember Fleet began its silent campaign, old rivalries between member species reignited. The Grell accused the Suvathi of provoking humanity with their overreach. The Suvathi blamed the Varnax for mishandling First Contact. The Tarsk withdrew entirely, sealing their borders and declaring neutrality. Panic spread like wildfire across systems that once strutted under the Council's banner, proud and untouchable. I was summoned to a special session on Talvaran Prime, a neutral world untouched by Earth's wrath, yet. The entire Council convened there for the first time in over a decade. I was invited not as a diplomat, but as a witness. A human, standing among aliens who once dismissed us as primitive upstarts. Now they looked at me like a loaded weapon. The chamber was chaos. Thousands of species, hundreds of dialects, every voice raised in fear and accusation. Floating holograms displayed footage of Earth's new war machines, massive, angular, and quiet. Too quiet. They didn't radiate energy the way council ships did. They absorbed it. Sensors couldn't track them, and when one did appear, it was always too late. A representative from the Narra Collective, long known for their superior stealth tech, raised a trembling claw. They broke the rules of war. They fire through fold space. They erase mass. That is not warfare. That is artillery from hell. Another shouted, "This is punishment, not retaliation." Then, without warning, the central chamber dimmed. Every comms channel locked. Every AI assistant froze. The floor lit up with a simple pattern, an old human transmission protocol, long thought obsolete. And then she appeared. A projection, tall and cloaked in dark robes, stood at the center of the chamber. Her face was pale, her eyes unreadable. Human. Composed. Terrifying. She didn't introduce herself. Didn't raise her voice. She simply spoke. "We offered peace." Her voice echoed unnaturally, as though coming from inside the listener's own thoughts. "We offered knowledge. We offered alliance. You answered with fear. You struck first." Dozens of delegates rose to protest, to scream, but their comms remained locked. "You feared what we might become. And so, you burned our world. You scattered our people. You turned our sky to ash." A pause. Then the voice sharpened. "You taught us that survival is not a gift, but a fight." Behind her, new images appeared. Entire council fleets drifting in ruin, cities on Suvathi, 3 left abandoned, Tarsk black sites erased from existence. "We are not seeking war." Another pause. "We are ending a conversation that you started." With that, the projection vanished. The lights returned. The chamber was silent. No one moved. That day, for the first time in council history, a vote of disbandment was formally proposed. It didn't pass. Not yet. But the seed had been planted. And every delegate left that room knowing one truth: the humans hadn't just returned. They had come to rewrite the order of the stars. Returning to Sol was nothing like I had imagined. I'd spent 2 decades dreaming of home, trying to remember the Earth I'd left behind, the smell of rain on concrete, the chatter of markets, the soft hum of streetlights. But when the Veritas slipped past Neptune's orbit, I realized Earth had become something else entirely. The electromagnetic blackout field was still in place, but we carried special clearance, one of the few vessels authorized under the new Terran protocols. Our ship was scanned, dissected, and reassembled in real time by a lattice of orbiting drones before being allowed further. It wasn't security, it was surgery. And then I saw it. Stretching beyond the orbit of Saturn was the Dyson Array, an artificial ring of solar harvesters and mass forges that pulsed with light. It was the size of a planet, humming softly like a sleeping beast. This was no defensive structure. This was infrastructure, built for permanence, for power, for domination. It was harvesting energy from Sol itself and feeding it into an invisible network of orbitals and subterranean cores. Jenna, my old pilot, was still with me. She stared through the viewport and whispered, "This isn't Earth anymore." She was right. The Earth we descended toward was no longer scarred. The atmosphere was clearer than I remembered. Oceans gleamed with unnatural blue. Cities weren't just rebuilt, they floated, suspended in gravitational fields above forests that spanned continents. Vast crystalline towers pierced the skies, each a fusion of organic and synthetic architecture. And then there was the Arc Nexus. Stationed above the Pacific, it resembled a spiraling flower of light and metal, constantly shifting and rotating, housing the central AI core of Terran High Command. It was said that inside the Nexus resided the voices of millions, those lost in the Council's first strike, uploaded and integrated into the neural grid. Survivors reborn as architects of vengeance. I was escorted through a tunnel of light into the Nexus itself. My guide was not human, not in the old sense. Her eyes glowed softly, and her voice carried a resonance that hinted at multiple speakers behind it. I didn't know if I was speaking to a person, a machine, or both. She introduced herself as Mira, a composite intelligence of several war survivors. "You've been away," she said. "Too long," I replied. She walked me through the central chamber, a cathedral of data streams, hovering archives, and memory sculptures. Each pulse of energy in the air seemed to carry emotion. Pain. Rage. resolve. These were not cold machines. These were witnesses. Mira turned to me. The galaxy fears our return. And should they? I asked. She considered this. They should remember why they feared us. And why they should never strike again. That night, from the observation deck, I watched the Earth glow, not with fire or ruin, but with purpose. With strength honed by suffering. We weren't just back. We were reborn. And the stars would never look the same again. The final battle never came. Everyone expected it. Dozens of council races prepared for an extinction-level conflict, a last stand against what they now whispered as the Returned. Whole systems fortified their borders, evacuating colonies, rallying fleets, activating deep planet failsafes. They believed humanity would sweep through the stars with fire and vengeance in their wake, obliterating those who had once dared strike Earth. But the Ember Fleet didn't attack. They surrounded the Council's capital system, Orelise Prime, without firing a single shot. No war cries. No orbital bombardments. Just 27 dreadnoughts arranged in silent formation, encircling the seat of galactic power like funeral sentinels. I watched it all unfold from the bridge of the Veritas, parked just beyond the system's edge, linked directly to Earth's command feed. Mira stood beside me, her gaze distant, her mind connected to countless networks. Below us, on the surface of Orelise, panic erupted. Evacuation alarms blared. Politicians scattered. Entire council factions fell into disarray, convinced the sky was moments away from falling. Instead, humanity sent a message. Not a threat. Not a demand. An invitation. Delegates from every species were summoned to a floating platform above Orelise, a neutral zone declared by Earth. They arrived terrified, guarded by trembling soldiers and shielded transports. The humans didn't bring weapons. They brought diplomats, scientists, engineers, healers. I watched them step onto that platform, wearing no armor, no powered suits. Just dark robes and the insignia of a new Earth. And at their head stood a woman I hadn't seen in years. Ambassador Ilara Voss. She had once been a junior peace envoy during the years leading up to the bombardment. The Council ignored her then. They wouldn't ignore her now. She spoke with a voice amplified not by tech, but by presence. Calm, strong, unforgiving. You feared our rise. You struck before we could speak. You tried to erase us. She paused, letting the silence dig into the gathered aliens like blades. And we endured. We rebuilt. We rose. Some delegates tried to interrupt, but Ilara raised her hand. A subtle gesture. Instantly, the holographic display around the platform activated, showing the burning cities of Earth from decades ago. The smoldering ruins. The faces of children pulled from collapsed shelters. You watched us burn, she said. And now we offer you two paths. The holograms changed. One showed a star chart of war, dozens of systems reduced to dust. The other showed a new network, unified trade, knowledge exchange, shared defense platforms, ecological renewal projects. We do not seek revenge, Ilara said. We offer order. Not the kind you forced upon us, but the kind we forged in the aftermath. An alliance founded not on fear, but on earned respect. No one cheered. No one clapped. They just listened. Because they finally understood what Earth had become. Not a military power. Not a mindless destroyer. But something far more dangerous. A leader. The Tarsk were the first to kneel. Followed by the Kellery. Then the Varnax, the very species whose dreadnoughts had first rained death on Earth, lowered their banners and stepped forward. Not all agreed. A few species refused. Some tried to flee. They didn't get far. The Ember Fleet didn't kill them. They disabled them, deconstructing ships mid-flight, warping power cores into harmless clouds of matter. Surgical, bloodless, efficient. Back on the Veritas, I turned to Mira. You could rule everything now. You could crush them. She nodded slowly. We could. But you won't. Her eyes glowed faintly. No. We lead. There's a difference. That evening, across the galaxy, broadcasts lit up with the same message in every known language. The Terran Accord begins. The stars are no longer divided by fear. They are bound by memory. Earth did not rewrite the laws of the galaxy with war. We rewrote them with what we became. Stronger not in our weapons, but in our restraint. Not in how we conquered, but in how we remembered. The Council didn't collapse. It dissolved, silently, without ceremony. What rose in its place wasn't a new empire. It was a federation forged in trauma and rebirth. Humanity sat at the heart of it, not as rulers, but as reminders. Of what happens when peace is shattered. Of what emerges when fire burns away the rot. And so the stars changed. Not through conquest, but because Earth had suffered, survived, and come back not to destroy, but to teach the galaxy why it must never forget.